If you have seen the show Billions on TV, you should better listen to this one because this is a deep dive of Kamille Rose. She's a peak performance mindset coach like Wendy Rhodes in Billions. Today, she sells a 25K one-on-one coaching package. Ultimately, the goal is to remove mental blockages. And here's the interesting thing. She brings in the majority of customers through speaking engagement and referrals because CEOs talk to each other and CEOs tell CEOs. On top of that, YouTube is her channel to build up trust. It's almost like a business card, which then leads to clarity calls and then ultimately to speaking and getting these people signed up. That's a $600,000 business with an audience of 8,713 fans, followers, subscribers. That is almost $70 per fan, follower, subscriber, which is insane. So really excited about this deep dive. Let's go. You make sure you have a constant stream of customers. And also, what is retention to make sure that you have always clients. And topic number 2 is then creating systems and automations to let them do the job as well. And you're not just like in constant calls, not having any time for your family and so on and so forth. So I would like to double click on that as well. Let's start off with the first one. How do you get customers into your group coaching and the one-on-one? I mean, it's like 65 right now. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I would say prior to the pandemic, a lot of what I did were in-person events. So I did a lot of like public speaking engagements. I would do in-person workshops. So like I was out there what I call pounding the pavement, right? And then post-pandemic, switched my entire model completely online. And this is where I started focusing a lot more on YouTube and social media. Now, I'm by no means like a huge YouTuber, but I would say I have a very dedicated, smaller following. So maybe that's just because I've developed a lot of personal relationships with people. So, for example, if I post up a YouTube video or I post up something on Instagram or Facebook, I do my best to respond to everybody, or at least have my team respond. So, I have a very lean team. I have one executive assistant who is virtual. She's amazing. And so, she is very operationally minded. I'm a lot more of the visionary. So I can see like the ideas, I know where we want to go, but she loves schedules and I would say customer and relationship management, which is not my strong suit. Her organizational skills are amazing. So this is going to touch a little bit on that second question where just having someone there who complements your strengths is really, really helpful. And by the way, Matthias, she's also a mom. So she's got 3 kids. I have 1 kid. So I think that's very helpful. But to go back to customer acquisition, so a lot of it is now putting my voice and my brand and my style out on social media, particularly on YouTube and Instagram. That's where a lot of my audience is. And so what I've noticed is it's almost like I get to develop a somewhat personal relationship with them, and that becomes my introduction. It's almost like dating someone, they get to know me, and then that's where they decide if they want to work with me. So now a lot of the customer acquisition pieces come from the content that gets put out on social media and then people reaching out, hopping on a clarity call or joining a program. And then the second is just referrals. So clients that I've worked with for years, whenever someone asks them, oh, I really need to start working with a coach. I kind of need somebody to just help me with my mindset. I'm usually the first person they're like, oh, you got to call Kamille. So I'm very blessed in that sense. I think as I've evolved in my business, also being as a mom, I do my very best to keep adding more value into either the group or my one-to-ones with people. And so through that, a lot of organic referrals come that way. I don't really push too hard. Maybe I should push harder, but I have a little bit more of what I call the attraction model. It just works for my personality. I enjoy just doing what I do best, which is the coaching, the content, and being there for people. And then, I don't know what you would call it, but it just kind of comes, thankfully. I'm a little bit more strategic now, but that's certainly been the model for a long time.
Lots of questions that I have. First of all, like that the audience knows, right? She has 1,070 YouTube subscribers as we speak, 1,000, and about 3K on Instagram, right? And it's a 500K business. So like it's significant revenue per follower, like significant. This is outstanding, right? There's not a lot of people with that revenue to follower ratio. And now let's double click on the referrals because I think that's interesting. When you start out as a business, right, you don't have referrals because you don't have any customers. And then you get your first customers and then you hope that you do a good job. And in the end, they renew, they stay, and maybe they at some point refer. What's your philosophy, or how do you drive referrals? Some people ask very, very early on referrals, because they say, like even after day one, you could theoretically ask for referral. Even like I've spoken with some person says, hey, who would you like to do this program together with?
Mm-hmm.
Huh? So like even like right after the purchase decision. So tell us what you learned about referrals and how that really works.
Yeah. So that's interesting. I don't necessarily ask for, let's say, the referral directly, like, hey, who do you know that I could work with? Has always felt really awkward for me. But instead, I find ways to get in front of their people. So, for example, if I'm working with a CEO who has a big team, I'll ask something along the lines of, if there is ever a team meeting, or if you guys have like quarterly seminars, if you ever need a speaker, I'm happy to come in and kind of break down some mindset pieces for everyone. And so at that point, they'll usually say, oh, absolutely. I would love that. That'd be so great to have everyone kind of hear a little bit of your voice. And so often what'll happen is either I speak to the whole team or they invite another colleague. And then somebody kind of hears me speak. And then that's where their interest is piqued. Well, oh, how can I work with her? Or another CEO comes in, or a good friend who's like a COO. So I kind of do it in that way. Sometimes as well, a lot of my clients will host their own masterminds and their own conferences. So same thing there. I ask if you ever need a speaker, I got your back. Or if you guys ever need some extra content, I'm happy to put like a deck together for you because I already have the content. So it's pretty easy for me and my team. So essentially, what I'm saying is I find ways to add value in which either my work, my voice, or just what we do as a team can be in front of their people. Because what I've found is that when people kind of get a taste of you here in the States, I call it the Costco uh, strategy, right? Just give them a little bit. Like all you got to do is like, hey, here's a sample if you want some. And then they take a little bit of a bite and it's like, where do I buy the full box? Like, how do I get, 1,000 of these for the whole year? So that's been very helpful for me, is just being able to be in front of their people.
So would it be true then that, and this might also be not true, because you have two ways to get referrals. One is through, let's say, team meetings, and you share there something and other people say this is really cool, or through conferences that they organize, right? So is it fair to say that, I don't know, half or more than even come from the same company? Like, so it's a referral from someone that's already with you but working at the same company because you're in a team meeting of that same company?
Not always. Because they also do conferences, sometimes our conferences are open to a lot of different companies, so that they're sort of I guess you could say, the expert in the arena. So, as an example, I've got a lot of clients in the real estate industry. So many of my clients are like large team broker owners. They have these huge conferences for all agents across the country. And they do it for two reasons. One, often it's for recruitment if they're looking to bring agents onto their team. And then two, it's for networking, right? They want to kind of get together and mastermind with other high level players, and it's their way to do that. So then I end up in front of agents from all over the country. So that's another way that they do it. Masterminds are really big because I started enacting that in my own mastermind. So I'll have live in-person masterminds for my clients and members. And then what I've allowed them to do now is I'm like, hey, feel free to bring in a plus one, anyone that you feel is valuable to your life and your business, bring them into the 2-day mastermind. So that's also been really great because now they're bringing in these very high level people who are close to them, whether it's a business partner or someone in their life like a spouse. And then often they'll be like, wow, this was a great weekend. Thank you so much for bringing me for free. And then that's another way that sort of builds organically. What happens, the reason I like it too, is they end up being similar personalities or like minded naturally to the people that I already enjoy working with. So that's been fun.
And how do you get picked to be a speaker in front of all of these people? Let's say there's someone out there who's like, oh, I would like to be on stage in front of all of these real estate people, but like zero connection, zero clue how to do it. How will they do it?
Well, I think one of the platforms that's been very helpful for me is YouTube and LinkedIn, interestingly enough. And I don't even do that much yet to optimize it. I've finally caught wind of it. Maybe I'm late to the game, but I started working very closely with a high level YouTube coach. So, I'm hoping when we redo another interview, you'll see a drastic shift in my followers numbers and quality of the content. That's the goal, at least. But YouTube has been really big because I've found that a lot of my audience, they instead of Googling, they just YouTube, let's say mindset coach, success. And as long as my name pops up somewhere, and then they can get to watch me, right? Again, the Costco sample, they're like, oh, I really like her style. I like what she speaks about. She seems to fit what we're looking for. Then it almost sells itself. Like I don't always have to get on a call. Sometimes I just say, I love what you have to say. How do we get you on our stage?
Okay, this sheds some new light on it, because what you're actually saying is you want to rank on the right terms on Google correctly, and then your YouTube is more like a business card where they actually want to get a flavor of who you are and what you're doing, and when they like that, then they will reach out to you and will say, hey, let's talk about this. Is that correct?
Right, right. Like my goal on YouTube, I guess I see it two ways. There's people who want to just create content to be an influencer, maybe monetize that content, build brands, and I think that's phenomenal. I'm really using it more as a way to funnel towards the business, obviously to add value to people who just need help with their mindset. But it's my way of saying, here's my style, take it or leave it. It's all good if you don't like it, but if you do, here's how you contact me.
Yeah, that makes total sense now. So clear. Um, One more question on that before we move into the second topic, and this comes maybe from a personal experience. So I watched Billions, I think, on I don't know which. I think it was Showtime. It's not Netflix or anything. And there's like a guy called X, and he's like running this hedge fund, and they have a performance coach in their office. Her name is Wendy Rose. And every time when someone is not performing in the team, then he or she is sent to Wendy Rhodes. She does her 2 minutes of magic, and then this person comes out and makes like 8-figure profit. So like, we need the Wendy Rhodes. It's like, we have to have her, like find her. So I was Googling for performance coach. There's nothing like, I mean, at least I couldn't find a lot of, it didn't seem to be like such a big niche and vertical, at least, like if I look for media buyer or advertiser, whatever, agency, marketing agency, there's tons of them. But a performance coach, I at least struggled to find one. And then ultimately we gave up and asked my head of people to level up on performance mindset, because she had like talent to it. But it's interesting. So you want to exactly own that vertical, and that's how you get your customers. I think it's a huge niche. Like every company wants to be more performant, especially in these times.
Right. It's funny you mentioned Billions too, because one of my first very big clients, before he started working with me, I said, hey, have you ever seen the show Billions? I kid you not, Matthias, is literally what I told him. And he goes, no. And so I think he binge watched it that weekend, calls me back the following week, again, before we started working together. And he goes, I get it now. I need you to be my Wendy Rhodes. And I was like, he got it. Because I didn't know how to explain myself at the time. And for some reason, that show was the only example. And so to your point, he made me his Wendy Rhodes. And then that's how I ended up working with him. And that relationship has also been a game changer, because he's one of those people that I told you has a really large audience, big conferences, masterminds. And so, uh, we've become good friends now, but because he also put me on those stages, he introduced me to a lot of people, that opened up a gateway for a lot of business. So I'm very grateful to just key relationships that also, help leverage what we do. So
Love it, love it. Hey, one more, maybe it's helpful, maybe not. I don't know, but I took it to such an extent that I was Googling for clips of Wendy
yeah.
Rhodes in the best conversations. And I like was sharing this with the teams, like watch the show, like do it exactly like her, like that's what you need to do, and so on. This is what I mean by performance coach. So if I were to Google Wendy Rhodes and performance coach or something like that, right? Like owning this number one on Google, I think, I don't know what the demand is for that right now, or the search queries, but that's definitely something to connect that brand of Wendy Rhodes. Exactly what you've done unscalable, but going into a scalable
Right.
version of that, so that people, like essentially Billions does the sell for you. They're already kind of like, I need Wendy Rhodes. I know you are Wendy Rhodes,
Yeah.
so I want to
Yeah.
hire you. The sales already done. Just like where do I need to wire the money?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's like the ideal, I guess, private client. Now, I know we'll get into this conversation of scalability, because I can't do that model forever, nor would I want to. It's a big part of what I do and I love it, but it's not going to give me the time freedom that I'm looking for. Lucrative in the short term.
Perfect
Yeah.
transition. So let's talk about that. So how do you get that work-life balance that you're currently looking for as a new mom? How do you get that to have a solid six-figure business and make the family happy?
Yeah. I would say it's very intentional, right? You don't get to this place by default. I call it by design. And so by design means I really have to look at what are my true strengths as a leader? What are my true weaknesses? And I knew for a fact that my weakness was calendaring, scheduling, and then relationship management. And that's why my first hire was an executive assistant who was very strong at that. It was a stretch. I remember at the time too, I was like, can I really afford someone? But it got to the point where I was like, well, I can't not afford to have her because there's no way I can do this by myself. So bringing on somebody who, one, could manage all of the client relationships, and two, handle the calendar, because, reschedule, schedule, all of that. And then the third, and I didn't think this was going to be as big of an issue as it was, but billing issues. So it's just like when people have to update credit cards or, subscription payments to go through. So just having someone to do that, because the biggest mistake I made early on was thinking, oh, this doesn't take long. I can handle it. It's going to be like 3 minutes, right? And then there's 1,000 3-minute things. And then I didn't even do what I needed to do for the day. And that's where my assistant Donna came in, and she's essentially become almost my COO now. I told her that's my goal for her. I was like, I just need to turn you to a COO and then backfill all the other work that you do so she could run all the operations. So that's one, getting somebody on your team who's great at what you're not great at. And then the second one, to add to this, not only did I have a kiddo in the midst of growing the business, but I decided I'm going to take another day off a week. So I decided, okay, Tuesdays is my day off with my son. And I asked my assistant, is this possible? With the amount of people we have, with the group coaching we do, can I take another day off without working a 15-hour day the other days of the week? And she's the one who analyzed it for me and said, we'll make it work. We will find a way for you. And I was like, wow, okay. Because my goal is to eventually get down to where I'm only working, let's say, 2 main days a week, but I've done it like kind of gradually, where I pull out one day and then see how I feel. So it's possible. It's hard. Now, the last thing I will say, the third piece that's been very helpful is when I started adding group calls. So naturally, instead of just having a bunch of one-to-ones, I have one mastermind call a week, a live program, and then now I could get, 20, 25 people, 30 people on a Zoom call. And it feels like one-to-one coaching in that sense, but then you also get the power of community. Now, it's a much more affordable price point, but way more scalable, right? Because there's no way I could have added another 30 people to my roster and been able to talk to them. But I can all add them at one time in one space to do that. Then wanting to think even bigger, it's like, okay, eventually though, I'm not also going to want to do the live group calls for everyone. Not everyone can afford, let's say, now I think the membership's $297 a month. So $297 a month for live group calls once a week. This is where the app came in with Passion. I always asked myself, how could I duplicate myself? And then the question got better because I would have people literally tell me, those who were not coaching with me, comments on YouTube, comments on Instagram, I wish I could put you in my back pocket. And so then I was like, oh, well, then how do I put myself in people's back pocket? Like if they just literally want to grab their phone and be like, what would Kamille have to say about this? I'm suffering with, anxiety on this decision. I am dealing with overwhelm right now, but they can't hop on a one-to-one with me. They can't, let's say right now, afford to join the program, but maybe there's a way. Now I know with AI and all of that coming up, there's all this talk of what could be. But in my gut, I still feel like, the computer, the AI version of me, it's not going to hit the same as if it's like, let's say, my voice, my face recorded on something, even if, it's not completely live. And so I said, well, if I could create an app with my style of coaching, maybe with a couple of key topics, that could be really helpful for people. But I'm not tech savvy, and I didn't exactly have 100K in 3 years to throw down on web developers and app developers. That felt like I was creating a whole new company, and I'm not a techie. Like it just wasn't something. So somehow the algorithm found me with Passion. And then I saw Dan Harvey's face, and he was talking about, hey, if you're a coach or a content creator and you want to make an app in just 180 minutes, here's how you do it. And I said, this guy's BS. Like, no way. But I watched the video and I watched him build it, and I was like, oh my goodness, let's see if this is legit. And then that's how I started building out the app. So I'm excited for what it's to come with it. I think it's going to launch about summer of this year. So that'll be my first beta test of how that works.
Let me double click on the use case. So the use case is I bet you have some recurring questions or things that happen in the group coaching, also in the one-on-ones, and you build essentially programs, skill bites. I don't know what you call that, like things, like thoughts, philosophies, principles that you stand for, and you put these in the app. And instead of like explaining things over and over again, you just like say, just go into the app and look at this and look at that, and that's it. Or what's the use case?
Yeah, I would say there's two now that I've seen what the app can do. There are actual, because I have so much content just from years of doing one-to-ones and then these group things. So I'm going to be able to put those in different sections. So my sort of what I call trifecta of coaching is mindset, action, and environment. I'm always covering those three things. So what I envision is I have a section that's all mindset pieces. I have a section that's all action and habit building. And then the third section is environment. So environment covers your literal physical environment, the people you keep around you, the schedule you keep, because that's the one piece that I think folks often overlook in high performance is how important the environment is around you. And when you get very good at designing the environment around you, you actually don't have to be that disciplined because the environment doesn't allow you to fail, essentially. So I would say content in that. But then the second piece is I still like the fact that it's almost like a community, because one of the things that I've done in my business model is I've gotten off of Facebook. I used to have a Facebook group. And the only reason I did that is because for my clientele, one of the things we focus on is focus. And social media was one of the biggest distractions, especially Facebook. And they felt every time I go into our group, I never get to it because I have to go through 100 notifications. And then they get distracted, and then they never actually get into the group to give me the update that they were supposed to give me. So I wanted something offline. Discord was an option, but it felt too gamery, if that makes sense. And I have a little bit more of I'd say like a professional entrepreneur executive type. And so I didn't need a gamer type of setup for them. And it was just another thing that they were going to have to learn. So, a branded app, one place, one thing on their phone, notifications. I know this is all Kamille stuff. That was really important for me.
Very clear. That was very insightful. Thank you so much, Kamille Rose. That was really good on customer acquisition, referrals, and now also how to systemize that today and then going forward. Would love to do that again in the future. Thank you so much for the value and taking us to the next level.
Awesome. I'm excited. Thank you, Matthias.